Welcome everybody, PTR TV here on a Monday night, and it's been a while, but we are given another Racer's Mind. We're on episode number 9, and you'll notice to the person to my left, it is not Brandon Krutz, who it usually is. Kyle Hare from SYM TV, a channel that we work with and talk to quite a bit. So Kyle, welcome, and how are you?
Thanks, Corey. This is exciting. I've been looking forward to this one. Obviously, this is an issue I'm quite passionate about, probably to a negative, but I'm excited for it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I know myself. I've been in the forums on this. Again, I'm an OG iRacing member. I've had many a post. I've had staff actually talk to me about it. And I know, Kyle, you're on the rampage of it as well. Some people will call it a rampage based on what we've done in the past week or so, but as I've titled it, I call it the content dilemma. So before we divulge into it, obviously, Corey Silva, you know me, PTR TV. We're a little light on the broadcast now, but we're working on that. We just did a whole bunch of stuff prepping for the 2019 season, and we'll be picking up some slack on the esports network, doing some stuff, so we're excited about that. And just again, Kyle, it's a little introduction for you guys, because I know you have a lot of big things going on. How can the viewers find about you, and what are you guys up to?
Well, you can find us at youtube.com/SymTV Broadcasting, and on Facebook is at SymTV Broadcasting, and our website, SymTVBroadcasting.com. There's a lot of SymTV broadcasting there. But next Wednesday, we are streaming the Spec MX5 Sim Racing Championship on the Winding Road Magazine YouTube channel to 450,000 subscribers. So that's really exciting. We have Grid Life working with us now, as well as the Washington, D.C. region SCCA. So we got all sorts of good stuff and recurring groups that we've been working with forever, like Fuel and Scars and all that good stuff coming up. So there's going to be a point in March, I think we're doing 6 or 7 broadcasts a week, so it's just going to be a grind for at least the first half of 2019.
Yeah, and I know, I think safely saying 450,000 subscribers you guys are going to be broadcasting on. That is, I mean, I don't even have to ask, that is the biggest platform iRacing has been streamed on. Yet I think that even beats the NASCAR Facebook page and stuff like that, so I know you guys must be having a lot of nerves and kind of wondering how much of that actually is going to turn out to watch sim racing and how they will accept it. And then obviously you guys, how you guys will bring it to them.
Right. Well, I think actually the first week they're running next week is at Virginia International Raceway, which is one of the tracks that will fit perfectly into this discussion tonight, yes. I think. So
again, the discussion. And where, Kyle, I know you're not newer to iRacing, but I mean, I've been here since day one, so well, this kind of too long didn't read version is iRacing, again, and I want to preface this because this may come off on the negative end, and if anybody watching, if the music's too loud, let me know. I like having a little bit, but if it's too loud, let me know. Everyone knows iRacing loves detail. We've had our laser scan tracks. iRacing started, I think, 06, 07, after they took the rights away from NR 2003, that they shut that down. All the modders got shut down because iRacing got the rights to it and was going to use that base code to start iRacing, which they did. And I think they started 06, the betas in 07, they opened to the public in 08. That's when I joined. I joined about a month before the open beta. But when the open beta came out, there was already, I mean, you're going to make me go back 12 years now. There was already at least 10 or 12 tracks in the service at that point. I know Daytona 07, South Boston, Lanier, Laguna Seca. I want to say VIR was in there in the OG status, I call it. Summit Point, Watkins Glen. And there was a couple that came soon out after opening, like Sonoma, Barber, stuff like that. But the moral of the story is this is all dating back 10, 12 years at this point. So if the tracks came out in 08, we know the time scale of iRacing. So those tracks were scanned 05, well, maybe not 05. I mean, they might be for Atlanta as well. 06, 07, a lot of scanning got done. And then the track boom started off in the beginning. All the NASCAR stuff, 2008, 2009, 2010, they got the majority of the NASCAR calendar filled out by 2010. There was a couple late bloomers in there. Auto Club Kansas, they came 2012, 2013 with some scanning issues, but the bread and butter of iRacing came in before 2010. Obviously, we know Nordschleife, Lamar, Imola. Those high detail tracks have taken time, dirt. But the bread and butter, what we're going to be talking about is NASCAR. And all that stuff came out in 2008, 2010. And just think in the video game world even. 2008, Kyle, what were we on for platforms back then? Xbox, PS3? No, PS4? No, 3.
No, I think we were probably on the beginning of PS3, trailing edge of PS2. I mean, it's a long time. I was 10 years old. I'm a junior in college now.
Yeah, so we're going. So think of that, and that just kind of leads again to the iteration of the point that iRacing is in kind of a position right now that no other title has ever been in. No other title has ever been in a single iteration and then lasted in that same iteration and continued development of it for so long. So think of it, we're touting these tracks, VIR, Sonoma, I mean the ovals like Las Vegas, I know I forgot that one, let's say Bristol's even in there as well, Atlanta, Martinsville. These are the tracks that if you're just starting on the service, let's say I'm watching because of all the $100,000 peak antifreeze esports series. If I'm just, oh, hey, look at this, I'm going to sign up for iRacing. You know, all the people in chat that they don't know what iRacing is. This is all new to them. They're signing up for it. Oh, NASCAR's at Atlanta next week. Oh, I got to go buy that because I want it. You load up Atlanta. It's not even well, I mean, it's the same configuration and it's the same name, but that's about as far as it is. It has changed so much in 10 years, 12 years, 13 years, but you still have that same $14.95 price tag as a track that just came out yesterday.
Yeah, I think, and before I go anywhere with this, I need to preface one thing. iRacing is my sim of choice. It always has been, it always will be. And I'm a huge iRacing fanboy, and everything I'm going to say from this point on is out of love for iRacing only. And because obviously, like you said, this can come off kind of negative, so let's just get that out of the way.
I'll reiterate it for myself as well.
But Corey, you bring up a great point about, you know, the majority, the bread and butter of the NASCAR tracks are ancient, and in all honesty, there are some that are old but can probably suffice and people won't notice that much. But there are definitely ones that are more glaring than others. And there becomes a point, when you mentioned the price tag, in iRacing, when you go to buy a $15 track, the difference in quality you get is enormous. There's no continuity between, you know, buying Virginia International Raceway or Atlanta and going out and buying Auto Club or the new Michigan or Pocono. I mean, there's such a massive range, and it's an inconsistent product, I feel, that kind of needs to be addressed, because we're cranking out new tracks and new cars all the time, which is awesome, but at the same time, we've grown that track list so much that it's becoming, there's no time for iRacing to go back and visit the older stuff that is desperately out of date. And so the difference is only growing as they get more and more advanced. The other tracks fall farther and farther behind. An
analogy I came up with, and there's going to be a bunch of analogies because I love analogies, is you buy Madden 19. So the Super Bowl just happened. So let's just say you're emulating the Super Bowl, Patriots, and you go out to Mercedes-Benz Field, and it's Madden 19. It's PS4, PS4 Pro, Xbox One X. It looks phenomenal in every regard. Kudos to EA Sports. You guys absolutely nailed it. So then let's go to Heinz Field for the Steelers. I think that's where they still play. I don't know. But let's say you go there, and magically, just without any explanation whatsoever, Madden loads up the Madden 09 version of Heinz Field, and you're playing on a PS3 era rendered stadium. You didn't know. You're like, what is this? It still says Madden 19 all over the pause screen, all over the graphics. It's Madden 19. But why are you magically playing in a game that in the rendered version from over 10 years ago? You didn't know. You just bought the game expecting it to be what it should be, and then you're stuck with this.
Right.
That's not fair. There needs to be, I mean, at the root of the issue, there needs to be an explanation somewhere in the track page, in the track cart page, whatever, what you're getting, because a viewer, and especially with the new stuff like Texas, Kentucky, You're gonna have viewers going out there, brand new people going out there buying Kentucky. It says Kentucky Speedway. Yay! I'm racing Kentucky. Wait, this isn't Kentucky. Well, it is, but why is it this? It should be this. There's no way to know it. In a way, it's almost false advertising.
Yeah, and so that's a good point there. I will say that obviously we're all quite aware that the track building process is a lot more involved than, say, building an EA Sports stadium. So there, a lot more time goes into them, and we're very aware of that. I think the problem is that that's actually the problem in itself, is that they take so long to do. But that's if you're building from scratch. We've seen in the past iRacing graphically redo tracks and update the shaders at the very least. I mean, I think the very least that someone could expect is that visually, graphically, texturally, the track is somewhat comparable to the modern stuff. I'm not going to expect that iRacing has every NASCAR track within 5 years of age completely scanned as, that new, everything updated down to the T, but I think there's a reasonable expectation that some of the tracks that have had larger changes, Texas, Kentucky, Pocono, Michigan, they've done, so we'll give them a pass on that. Those tracks that have had changes like that should get priority over, some of the other tracks that aren't necessarily as big or as important that are new.
Like, think of Concord Speedway. With all respect, it's a fun track. It's a very unique track. And all respect, who cares? It's Concord. It's a dead track. I'm pretty sure, this is one of the few places I haven't been to, I'm pretty sure there's a Nextel sign at Concord Speedway, if that's any reference. But again, that's a track that, as you said, we could pass on. I just got a comment in, it goes to my Madden reference, and it's, again, a lot of what I'm going to say with the graphics I'm going to pull up is don't take it surface level. If you take it surface level, you're not getting the point. The point is what the end product is and especially what the new viewer is going to see. When you buy an iRacing track, when you load into an iRacing track, especially, as I said, as a new viewer, you expect, especially as a brand new NASCAR fan, let's say you're a NASCAR Heat 3 convert, and everyone, it's NASCAR Heat 3. Well, look at something. Watch the Daytona 500 yesterday. There was a NASCAR Heat sticker on almost every single car in that field. And why is it? Because NASCAR Heat is an esport, has a huge esport thing. And yes, I get it. NASCAR Heat is a game. It's not a sim. It doesn't try to be a sim. But one thing NASCAR Heat does that NASCAR likes better, I'm sure, than iRacing, is that is something they can present and know that it is accurate. Is it accurate in terms of 3D geometry and physics? No. But if Parker Kligerman wanted to boot up NASCAR Heat 3 at Kentucky and play with Jeff Burton for a lap around Kentucky, the viewer is going to see that Kentucky, and they're going to watch the race, say, hey, that's the same Kentucky.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to note there. I will say also that I posted in the forums about this as well just today, and I posted in the past about this same issue about one specific track that we'll get to later. But it's not just from the driver's perspective that we're concerning this. Obviously, iRacing, for the members, I think they're mostly concerned about what they see from the cockpit, which isn't, in some of the tracks, they're a little bit outdated in terms of the geometry outside the track and the surrounding areas. That's okay if you're just watching the sim from inside the cockpit. The reality is that iRacing is trying to push more into the esport arena with the Peak Antifreeze series becoming so huge and having so much money on the line, going out to so many people. And when they see Daytona and it's missing safer barriers that have been there for 5 years now, that's a problem. And it's going to reflect negatively on what everyone says is the most realistic sim out there, when the safer barriers don't require a rescan to be put in there in the first place. They're a commonly known construction, so it's all already pre-known, all the dimensions of the safer barrier, so you can apply those to any track without having to go and rescan.
The only thing that they have to do, and this may be part of it, is I know they use, I don't know the exact word, but they'll take a picture of a wall graphic and they interpolate that image onto their texture of a safer barrier so that it looks as authentic as possible. So they would have to do a little manual work there. and make sure they get the graphic right, because they're not going to have the image of the graphic. They'd either have to go outsource it, get it, but there's that. But as you said, the 3D, that is a universal item, if you will, as you said. That could just be, I mean, go to Homestead, you could just make it blue. Go to, you know, go to Richmond or go to Darlington, you can make it red and white. I mean, so, all right, what else we got? We got PSI TV in here. Yes, and that's a very good point. There needs to be a level of concern to someone outside of the service. And the generic, before I get into the graphics, the visuals that I'm going to pull up on the screen. Oh my god, I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, it turns into what we're seeing for the end viewer. And before I pull into the graphics, you just have to think about it in this regard. If you're racing, and I pulled this up, and I think I can actually pull this up. I pulled up, I made a couple posts in the forums the other day, and I think they are very relevant to this, and it's about the safer barrier. It's not about the safer barrier, Kyle, and Kyle will admit it. It's not the safer barrier specifically. It's not that this billboard is not accurate. And screw it, I'll get off topic right now. It's about, these things are landmarks that show how old an item is. And when you bring this stuff up to the forums, here's my point. When you bring something up to the forums, well, why would they do this when we don't have Barcelona and we don't have, I don't know, we don't have this F1 track and there's no tracks and we need more Aussie tracks. So when you guys, as generic members, and when this problem is addressed, you're helping iRacing. And I get it, it's not profit. I mean, yeah, they charge a little bit. They're still probably losing money on these, but you have to keep your stuff relevant.
Well, interesting you mentioned the Daytona thing, because that was an interesting one for me, because as we're talking about updating tracks, there was news that Daytona is getting an update to the sim. And this is a problem in the way that they're doing it for me, and it's a little bit bigger than a small problem. They've updated the grandstands, which is fantastic. Do that. You don't have to go rescan the place to do that. So go for it. You know, update the grandstands. You know, will anybody tell that the surface is from 2011? Probably not. It hasn't really aged all that much. The problem I have is that the surface texture of the asphalt and the safer barrier and all the other objects weren't changed. So now we have a mismatch of eras. We have 2011 racetrack with 2017 grandstands. So that's even more incorrect than just having an old version of Daytona. So now it seems like almost, they had pressure from Daytona and NASCAR to push this out, so I get that. But as long as there's an expectation to get it corrected at some point, I think that needs to be something that's important, because we can't have mismatched eras. So
what is ultimately, and I'll ask you as your opinion, and what should be the advertisement for iRacing, especially if we're going to go the route of, and I'm not saying it's wrong, I get it. I mean, a track could take 3 months, it could take 6 months, it could take a year, it could take 2 years if it's in Nordschleife. I get it. And iRacing's not making as much money. They're stopping people off of other projects to off of new tracks, off of you know, other just graphical updates generically to do these. I get it. But at what point, if we're going to do the pick and choose, we're going to update this, we're going to leave this the same, what should be the level of authenticity that we are advertising? Because if we're going to nitpick and, all right, we're going to leave the safer barrier the same, this building's fine, this one will update, that one, whatever, no one will notice it, this one will totally redo, and the surface, we'll leave that, that's fine. If we're going to nitpick and choose what we're updating, and as you said, mismatch of eras, which I really love that exact quote, what should be the advertisement?
Yeah, I think, again, I actually did, I mentioned right before we started this, that I had a long conversation with Drew Adamson last night about the Daytona thing specifically. And really, it comes down to, you know, all of these are art projects. And one thing that I learned last night that I don't think a lot of people know is that most of the artists that work at iRacing are not based at the iRacing HQ in Bedford, Massachusetts. They're all over the country, which they work remotely, which I did not know that. So, you know, the problem is that you have almost a disjoint between, you know, a team of people working together to output things, and then what's actually going on, which is there's a lot of individual people all over the country that are working on separate projects. So, there, that's kind of a problem. And it's also, I mean, I'm trying to think of where I want to go with this, is that the mismatch of eras thing is becoming an issue because they are trying to update things at the rate that they can without pulling away time from new projects. Because they don't have the effort or the ability to put all the effort into updating the old stuff. So, when you look at something like Assetto Corsa, for example, a lot of the tracks there are scanned either with LiDAR, they're laser scanned, or they're just not scanned at all. That's not accurate, but laser scanning isn't accurate if the track's been repaved for 15 years, and it's really just becomes a time capsule, which is okay. It's okay.
To an extent.
To an extent. So, the thing is we don't want the entire sim to become a time capsule, because we obviously know there's a lot of people out there that look at iRacing as outdated, as having poor graphics. And I think a lot of it stems from the content being ancient and not getting looked after.
Yeah, and where is it? Right here. I am going to pull up. Hopefully it works the way I want it to. And it doesn't, but we're going to fix it on the fly because we have the technology to do so. There it is. Fix this. I know I tested this about 5 times and it worked until I actually needed it to work. Would you believe that?
Yes.
All right. So, top of the screen here, my post. To reiterate, I'm an OG member since 2008. I'm not going anywhere. iRacing is a huge part of my daily interactions, and I met a ton of great people, including the guy I'm talking to right now. It's not a sim or a game. It's honestly a lifestyle long term. Given that, I've seen a whole lot of development since day one. I know there are a whole bunch of people in the community with the same mindset, Empty Box being one. I tried getting him on here. He's a busy guy. All have a great passion. We want what's best for iRacing and its longevity. Here's where I get a little bit blunt. When you drive on the same bleeping version of a track in 2019 that you drove on in 2008, literally the same with the exception of a monster billboard, that's not a matter of priorities versus profits. That's a fundamental issue in keeping with the times. And then my second post directly after that was, if Martinsville, and I'm going to reference these next, if Martinsville got a texture update similar to what Daytona got on its 13-year-old scan, is that a yay because it looks more up to date, or a, well, what the hell, the track's already 13 years old, why not just rebuild it? Kyle and I are on the side of, one, just rebuild it at that point, but to each their own. If you say option 2 of, hey, it's okay just to update this stuff here and there, you're candy coating a basic business model and development system issue that's showing its flaws.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And like I said before, there are some tracks that are old that aren't in dire need of a rescan necessarily, but could just, and not even, it's not, I don't think there's a massive inventory of tracks that is in desperate need of a scan. I think there is a small group of tracks that really do need a scan, and a whole lot of tracks that could just use at least new textures and some new modeling. Because I think the realistic way to look at this is that there's no way for iRacing to keep up with the rate that they've established.
We're in, and but I'm gonna bring these up now before I forget. So I'm calling these time-stamped graphics. And are these amazing images that are gonna divulge much? No, but they will show you what you need to see. This is Darlington. I know, Kyle, you're waiting on a YouTube delay. It's Darlington. We are at the inside pit wall about turn 1, looking at the start-finish line. So what do I see right here? First thing I'm looking at is generic white walls, which the Darlington, someone will probably correct me, I want to say they started the retro walls in 2009, maybe 2010, somewhere in that time frame.
About right. Yeah. Yep.
So Darlington on the press box is currently in Darlington, and I don't have side-by-sides for this. I tried. I could not get the images that I wanted. Darlington is in retro font. Dodge Challenger 500. The last Dodge Challenger 500 was in 2008.
Oh, man.
So, again, timestamp graphics. Is the root issue these specific things? Yes and no. But the concept is these, by far, and Darlington's one of the biggest ones, they show to somebody who's loading into Darlington on retro Sunday night for the Southern 500. Well, why is this here? Is it? It's a timestamp. Next.
Right.
Well, I didn't even know what orders these were in. Kentucky Speedway. So I'm presented with 2 things here. A, I can see the old Kentucky Speedway, because obviously we know there's the reconfig, not just the repave, the entire reconfiguration. and I'm still waiting for it to change on your end, Kyle.
Yeah.
But there's a I specifically, and you can't really see it textually here, but you can see it in terms of when I tell you. This is where the crossover tunnel is in the infield. You'll see it says Quaker State 400, but there's a little banner on top of it, and if I knew how to zoom in on OBS, I would. But
I see what you're looking at.
But that says inaugural Quaker State 400. The inaugural Quaker State 400 was in 2011, leading that this scan was late 2010, early 2011. So we're 8 years old on top of a repave old. And yeah, I believe it's either Kentucky or Texas that's in the schedule for peak this season. Both are over 8 years old. Both are out-of-date configurations. Just throw that out there. Next, this is my favorite one of all time. Kyle, I already showed you this one. It's of Martinsville. So this is Martinsville, obviously. I mean, Martinsville, we don't have the lights. Those just came in 2016. So even with day and night, it's not like a Homestead or Vegas. The lights physically do not work at those tracks. We don't have the lights, so obviously they can't work. They haven't been rendered in because we're on a 13-year-old scan. And if you look on the scoring tower, it's not the 3D rendered, it's not the 3D LED one that they have now in real life. It is the old 5-person, just, you know, gym class scoreboard. And again, is this the root issue? No. You can see the little iRacing thing on top of it, which, you know, that was added in. But the best part, and you might be able to see this if you have high enough resolution, NASCAR Busch Series returns July 22nd. So again, timestamp graphics. The Busch Series, for those who don't know, the Busch Series was before Nationwide, which was before Xfinity, depending how young you are. Busch Series ended in 2007. They raced one race at Martinsville Speedway. That was in 2006. So that would lead you to believe late 2005, early 2006 this scan was done.
Yeah, so that's got to be one of the oldest tracks then, because that surprised me, because Martinsville is one of those tracks that doesn't really, to me, look all that bad, but that's interesting to note how old this one really is.
I'll give you, and like I said, I'll give credit on that. It's not as bad as other tracks by far, but like you said, this dates it back to early 2006, if not earlier than that.
Right. Next,
I think I have two more. So this is Talladega, and I can't get as much detail into this because the gods at Talladega didn't put the logos where I wanted them. But the first thing you could see on the left, Amp Energy 500. The last Amp Energy 500 was 2008. There are old Pepsi logos. Pepsi changed their logo in about 2009. But then you can't see it, but you know it's there. And this is mismatch of eras and conflict of interest, really. We have the Amp Energy 500, and we also have Monster Energy NASCAR Cup logos all over the track.
Yeah, I think that's another issue, too. I mean, when you have sponsors that not only are out of date, but conflict with other sponsors at the track because some have been updated and some have not. That's what I'm talking about with the whole Daytona issue, is if you're going to update a track graphically, you should just update it graphically. And if you're going to leave it, just leave it. I mean, I think kind of doing it half in, half out really is going to make it even worse. I
think this may be the last one of this playlist. Racing line, just, we're not doing any kind of call-ins in this, if you will. So whatever you have to say, just put it on chat. We will get to it as we can. But this is my favorite one of all. Thanks, Dale at Las Vegas is a big banner on the back straightaway. Thanks, Dale. It's been a great ride. Dale Jarrett retired in 2008, so that again, this dates it back to probably mid-2007. And then, this is actually Daytona. So this, I know this is getting updated, but this goes back to mismatches of eras, Kyle. At the current Daytona we have right now, in the pit road, there's a building and it says Home of the Pepsi 400. Pepsi 400, the last Pepsi 400 was 2007. But this was the new Daytona. This Daytona got redone in 2011 and 2012. This was a carryover building that was left over. Again, timestamp graphic. We left something and it ages the track even further than that. This is supposed to be the new version, and it was already for 4 years before this, it was the Coke 400.
Yeah, and actually one of the things I talked with Drew last night was, about textural upgrades and things, and one of the things he told me when he was talking about how it takes tracks so long to get made, he said that the artists are perfectionists, And I'll go, okay, I mean, I can see that on the newer stuff, but look back at this is a perfect example. And I know the artists have a lot to do, and they're very, very busy people. However, you know, this is the kind of inaccuracy that drives detail-oriented people crazy. And if you're not a detail-oriented person and on iRacing, you could probably save yourself a couple bucks, honestly, because iRacing is for detail-oriented people. That's, I mean, otherwise we wouldn't laser scan it,
yeah.
Right? So this is the kind of thing that drives people like me crazy, because it's just, I mean, it's just wrong. And
this, I've tried making a graphic, and I'm not happy with how it came out. So just, they're small, but they'll kind of show you a little bit right here. Here's Homestead. It's a then and now. Work, damn you. There it goes. So it's an overhead shot, and I didn't have a replay saved with race graphics, but you can see just overall the pavement is a lot different colored. The front straightaway at the new version, at the updated real life Homestead, all blue with forward. We don't have that. We have grass everywhere. There's grass on the back straightaway, and you can just see, look to the right of the screen behind the grandstands. There's the buildings there in real life, but look at it's just flat, just Google Earth scenery, and that's the stuff. Yeah, you don't see that driving. I get it. But we're broadcasters, and all it takes is one scenic cam for you to go around, and you'll see this stuff.
Yeah, and again, this really comes back to iRacing's pushing the esports thing. They're going out to a huge audience, and this does not help when prospective members see this kind of thing, because they're going to notice. And, you know, you get thousands of people watching your broadcasts on RaceSpot or whatever, and they're going to notice these things, and it's going to reflect very negatively on the sim when they're trying to come across as the super high-end, super accurate. And honestly, there is an expectation that it has to be high-end, because we pay way more.
$15 a track on top of the subscription.
The subscription is exactly my point. We pay monthly for the progression of the sim. And that is not only the online service, but also an expectation to keep everything reasonably up to date. I mean, I think that our money I want it to go to that purpose. And
then the final of this is Atlanta, and you can see, the pavement. I mean, we know Atlanta is the oldest pavement out there. You can see how much lighter it is. Chip Weil with Daytona specifically said, if you heard the 2017 Peak broadcast, he said, oh, you guys don't have the new Daytona Rising project. He probably said, that's okay, or brings me back to the old days of Daytona. Was that really okay that he just spent $400 million on the biggest sim racing broadcast of the year, and his pride and joy, his baby that he just spent all that money on, it's not reflected? And again, same thing this year. He was on it this year. He didn't say it. And I know iRacing, they had the optimization issue. They couldn't get it out in time. I get that. But it's still the basic principle.
Well, and the other thing, sorry to cut you off there, Corey. One of the things I wanted to mention also, before people get too up in arms about what I just said about the subscription thing, when you buy a track for $15, you do not own the track. It is not a purchase. Oh, it's a one-time purchase for you, but it's a license, because if iRacing were to disappear tomorrow, you don't get to keep that track. So with that comes an expectation that if we're going to license ourselves by paying this price, license a track, that is a $15 that is for Atlanta Motor Speedway. And it's, I think a lot of new members aren't thinking it's going to be 2007 Atlanta Motor Speedway. They're going to think it's Atlanta Motor Speedway, as current as they can keep it. So it's not only the subscription, but also the recurring costs of, when you buy this track 10 years down the line, I think there's an expectation that it should be a newer version of the track. I think that not only is it a subscription that we're paying for, but also the price of the track. So I just had to throw that out there as well for the pavement.
And then just quickly to wrap up this segment on Atlanta, you can see the pavement, you can see the red, white, blue. We don't have that. That's been out there for about 4 or 5 years. All the graphic textures in the infield we don't have, and the grandstand in 3 and 4 still there that we don't have. And again, timestamps. These are just the things that show the age of the content. So,
and actually, another thing about that, we probably just switched, but one of the things I noticed about the skies is that the skies look incredible now after the day-to-night transition update. They look amazing, and it makes the rest of the place just look old.
I mean, it gives it a little, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost a fake facelift, if you will. But again, it's not the intent of it to do that. It's just kind of a result of it. But all right, so before we get to the piece de resistance of this, ISM Raceway, that's a good point. And that's something that, again, if we're we have the laser scan surface, albeit really old. So if iRacing wants to keep with the laser scan method and say everything is 100% laser scan, we can't do this half-ass. I don't want to say half-ass because they're putting a lot of time and effort into these renderings. I mean, anybody who's done, I haven't, but I know people that have, doing 3D renderings, 3D modeling, stuff like that, especially to this kind of detail. I don't want to touch that. I don't want to know how much work went into that grandstand at Daytona, and I'm very curious to go through all the aisles and look for concession stand signs because that's what I like to do. So I don't want to know how much time was into that because I know it's a ton. But if we're gonna go the route of this, why can't we just do ISM Raceway on pure artwork and reference graphics alone? If we're gonna keep the surface alone, if we're just gonna tout that we have laser scan surfaces of the era, of the time, why don't we just say, well, screw it. We're not going to worry about specific laser scan scenery. We'll just do it on reference data. They can do Phoenix in a relative time frame.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, as I actually, and some people that are a little bit more hardcore than me, which is going to be hard to find, might say, okay, everything needs to be laser scanned. Every time you update the track, it's got to be redone completely. ISM was scanned in 2012 after the repave. I could 100% live with that surface being around for a little while. And I would be okay with changing around the grandstands around it, just because in reality it really hasn't changed that much. The problem is when you have something like Daytona where the safer barrier has changed and logos have changed, that stuff needs to get updated as well. But again, the ISM Raceway, I could live with that scan being that age.
In all respect, though, I mean, the only thing with that, Kyle, that I want to bring up, and well, first off, safer barriers, that's going to be a thing everywhere. Back in the era, 05, 06, 07, 08, it was in the corners, maybe the inside walls. Now every track is pretty much, the entire perimeter is done. But the thing with what you're saying, and I want to just get a little clarification on that, what we don't want to do, and you know, in any regard, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a manager or whatever, you never want to do anything conditionally. You kind of always want to have a rhyme or reason to something. So my only problem with that is then they're going and they're picking and choosing. I guess that one's okay. We kind of should have we're going to do it this way, and this is our mentality, because then you're going to have the person who says, well, why are you saying this is okay? This one's not. This one's horrible. You're going to let this one pass, but that one got it? Right.
Yeah, that's a fair point, too. So I can definitely see the other side of that. So, again, there's definitely some kind of middle ground to meet somewhere on this kind of thing, because obviously they could sit down and spend 5 years redoing everything that they've done up to this point, and then by the time they're done with that, another bunch of tracks are going to change. So it's going to be, they're going to be chasing tails no matter what method they use, I think.
And something that I know Tony Gardner actually came about this, because it came up with Long Beach, and someone just said, Tony, why don't you guys do what every other top tier title does and outsource your graphics to a third-party company? To say, all right, here is the track data, here is Long Beach, here is every building and photography of it in the Long Beach area, make it, let us know when you're done, here's your check. And he said to get them up to speed on the way iRacing does it, it's actually more of a loss and investment, because you're just, the time you spend for the quality you get, they don't like it, they don't want to go that route. But I almost feel like they kind of, if they did that, even community, you know how much of the community would do it for free? If they just, iRacing set up a private group of people who are really, really good with graphics and said, guys, this is what we're looking for. Here's a lot of reference data. If you feel comfortable doing this, do it, submit it to us, we'll give it a quality check, and blah, 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 blah. I know they don't want to go that route. I can understand the concerns of it, but you know, a lot of people would go for it.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and I think some people would say, well, iRacing's got to keep it, you know, if it's the same team, it's more consistent, yada, yada, yada. But we have seen, and again, this is going to be a controversial hot take here. We have seen in other sims and in other games, look at Enter 2003, for example. That game is, what is it, 16, 17 years old now? That's so old. But the content creators that are so passionate about that game still make content. They've added literally day to night for Enter 2003. Yeah. They did that. That was a thing that happened. There's more up-to-date, and again, they're not laser scanned, but they're up-to-date versions and of all the new tracks. And honestly, you could update Enter 2003 to where you could have all the new configurations of every track, more so than iRacing would. And that's just community-based. So is that, and after this, we'll get to the piece de resistance.
And this is something that, honestly, it applies more not to just... And first off, everything that we're saying, too, can apply to cars as well. We haven't really got into that, but it applies to cars.
That's actually a good point. I do think that... I think people in general will gravitate towards new cars, and the old ones will just kind of silently go away. And I think the problem was tracks don't silently go away because, you know, every schedule uses something at some point. So, you know, the Pontiac Solstice, for example, it's a rookie car, it's a free car, but nobody really races it anymore. And the people that do, I don't really think they're clamoring for the Solstice to get redone. I think it's more applicable to tracks, but yeah, you're right. To some cars as well.
Think of the original late model asphalt, the super late model, the touring modified. Those are all. I mean, I know they said even the polygon count behind those is. I mean, remember that was in PlayStation 3 era graphics technology. We're on 4K level in terms of what computers are capable of. So just the exponential increase in the graphic quality behind everything. Obviously, the tracks is what we're going for, but it applies to everything. But the last thing I want to talk about before we get to your topic, Kyle, is... Oh my God. What the hell was I just talking about? What was I just going on about before I got off track there?
I have no idea. I had a blank as well.
What is acceptable for a business model, if you will? Because obviously everyone wants, like, if you were Tony Gardner, Steve Myers, Kevin Bobbitt, whatever, and you could tackle this issue of we need new content because new content pays the bills, but we're in a never-ending spiral of getting outdated. We are getting pressure from series on getting the stuff updated. We have viewers that want X, Y, and Z done. We're trying to be... Ultimately, I think it all stems from iRacing is trying to be an all-in-one simulator and want every possible kind of racing in there. I mean, look at Rallycross. Was that a total waste of time? I mean, honestly, it probably was. Yeah. But we're trying to do everything. We're trying to get this, that, this, X, Y, Z, whatever else. We have a small team, very long development times. We can't do it. How would you, as Tony Gardner, you're going in the office tomorrow morning, guys, old tracks, this is what we're going to do?
Well, for me, I think right now, it is a risk as a business, especially when you tout the level of accuracy. It's a risk to really change what they've done on newer tracks, because obviously their newer stuff is absolutely incredible, and really it just comes down to manpower. And I think, honestly, for me, it's just an allocation of resources and manpower to things that can better benefit the Sims image as a whole. So Barcelona, we're getting that. That's a new thing that's coming. FIA Grade 1 track. Fantastic. I don't know what else they got in the pipeline because they refuse to tell us anything about those kind of things.
And honestly, like 5 or 6 dirt tracks that are scanned, and we know dirt's still in single digits in content. Right. So obviously, you know, that kind of stuff is coming. But I do think that, you know, we could probably scale back a little bit the new content and allocate more of the artists to going back, and at the very least, you know, rescans will come. Tony Gardner said that in the forums in past. They will come. At the very, very, very least, go back, redo some of the modeling, especially like the Armco at some of the older road tracks. It's just a 2D plane with an image texture on it. Give me a 3D model and replace that. Update the textures to higher resolution versions. That's the kind of stuff that, you know, is less time consuming than redoing the entire track, less expensive than redoing the entire track, but will elevate the sim as a whole in a way that it's currently not at right now. So that's the allocation of resources is a big thing for me. Again, we know the rescans will come, but scale back, because we honestly, iRacing's track list is absolutely phenomenal. If you're not looking at the age of the content, you're just looking at the list of tracks that we have. Honestly, it's the best of any game or sim out there. I mean, even Forza's got less tracks than we do by a huge margin. Project Cars 2, Gran Turismo, Assetto Corsa, all those other sims don't even come close to our track lists. So we can scale back. We have Le Mans, we have Nürburgring, we have Daytona, Talladega, all the big stuff that we need, I think that we have. We're missing a couple Formula 1 circuits, obviously those are big, but, you know, we could scale back and focus more on the older stuff. Yeah, and just one more thing, and it goes to that topic of the age of the tracks. Think of the day to night model. Back when these original tracks came out, and I know they've already confirmed, Tyler had to confirm they're working on this, Night racing, back in the, I like saying OG days of iRacing, it wasn't a thing. Richmond Raceway was the first track to have night racing, and I want to say that was 09 or 2010. I think it was 09. So everything before Richmond and a lot of the stuff after even doesn't have night race, especially every road course minus like 4 of them. So all of that, they have to go back, and because of how their rendering is, especially back in the day with how they're like, you know, how the buildings are. For example, a building. Think of a building, you render a building, you have glass on all the 4 sides like a press box. You put a light source in there. The light would naturally come through the building and illuminate the building and the exterior. That's not how iRacing worked back in the day, and it's not even how it works now as far as I know. Literally, They have to go back to every grandstand. There's a off version and then a lights on version. They have to do that for every single building that they want illuminated and every single light pole. So that's a separate thing too, but it goes on the same thing of the tracks are so old and there are varying technologies that went into them, which is digging them in a further development hole.
Yeah, they're going to dig themselves into an even deeper hole, because if they ever do get some, and honestly, I'm not, from my understanding of the day to night transition change, the shadows are not really dynamic in the way that a lot of other sims are. The shadows, and this is how Enter 2003 worked as well, because again, you know, as much as people say the code isn't, or it's nowhere even close to what Enter 2003 was, it still works basically the same, where you on the ground you have a shadow texture. That's how the shadows are done. Yeah. They're a shadow texture. As far as I know, and I know enough to feel pretty confident about that, what ends up happening is basically those shadows, each second or minute, however often they update it, that shadow texture changes and to a different pre-baked shadow layout depending on how the sun is shining down. It's not like the sun is shining rays onto the track and it's casting shadows, how you would dynamically expect it to. And the problem is that because they're using that old method of doing it, which works well right now, if they ever wanted to update it and do it the quote-unquote right way, then they have to go do all of those old tracks, all 85 plus tracks, and that's a big project there as well.
I'm not entirely sure, Kyle, if it still works that way. I know it did. Yeah, I don't know if it's still. I don't think it still does on everything. They do have
volumetric shadows as an option, but you can turn those off, and it will still have shadows on the grandstands and tracks and that sort of thing.
Because there are objects that aren't programmed or drawn a shadow, which sometimes it looks kind of weird. And I know we've even noticed with the day-to-night model, there's and I think this goes back to the lighting model and how it's programmed in at base level. The lights turn on, like graphically, you'll see the light rays and all the textures, the night light textures turn on, but there's no actual illumination for like another 20 minutes to a half hour, and I'm pretty sure that's
even the caution lights. Like the caution lights themselves, they don't cast light. They're just a texture.
The texture with blue.
So, exactly, it's the same. And to my understanding, that's how a lot of the lights work within iRacing. Not the car headlights and taillights, obviously. Actually, the taillights are actually an example of that because they don't cast a red glow either. Which at night they do. They would cast a glow on the track, but they don't because they're just a texture. Yeah, so that's a pretty global issue that they have. Yeah,
it's how iRacing just renders light sources individually, and it seems it's antiquated for the era. But we're not going to get everything into this. I do want to bring up the topic of Watkins Glen International Raceway, a track near and dear to Kyle, and both geographically as well.
Yeah.
So I have everything that you have given me on this track, and I will let you start it off and cue me when you want to bring up the various things that we have about this track.
Yeah, well, as long as they're in order, I think we should be good. So basically, the first image that we have here is an image of turn 1 at Watkins Glen in the sim. And this is a great example of, and this is just in testing mode, so this isn't in quote-unquote race trim. But this is an image of what it looks like in testing, and you can see how empty this image looks. This is a very empty feeling. There's no atmosphere here.
Something I want to give too, and there's an issue with the day-night model with the sky horizon. The sky horizon, obviously, I mean, it's the horizon, but tracks that don't have a lot of rendered world, if you will, they have a big issue with that gray blankness. And because Watkins Glen being so old, they didn't render a lot of exterior stuff back in the day. You could see just in this picture how much of that emptiness is there because of how small the world was rendered.
Yeah, and if you skip to the next image, this is a picture that I took at Watkins Glen in, I think this was 2016. Let me just double check that real quick to confirm. The picture was taken on August 5th, 2016. And you can see how much, it's missing. And again, there's 2 new grandstands here. The ones that are that were off in the distance before are now changed. There's 3 new grandstands in this corner. I'm actually sitting in one of the new ones. And look at the horizon. And obviously the horizon issue is one that they know exists, and they're trying to fix that. But just how far out they really need to model to capture the essence of Watkins Glen, because it's in a very mountainous region, and it's not captured in the current version.
Nope. And next, it looks like we are headed up the S's.
Yep. So this is an example of really where textural changes could mean a lot. If you take a look, this is again an example of the 2D image issue that I have a problem with, because the Armco at Watkins Glen is its signature feature, and that's kind of what everyone knows it for. And back in 2008, the resources were only really there to plant an image on a box of sorts, stretch it out, and there's your wall.
Yep, and you can see obviously with the full support, all the supports behind it, and obviously we are working on the repave to add insult to injury.
Right, and also if you notice the curbs changing as well, in the iRacing one, the curbs are painted white and they actually stop quite short, and then they have the black and white striped that are much taller. So not only are they painted, but the profile has changed, and actually the old ones were ripped out and completely reinstalled. So that's a big change going up the S's, because those tall curbs in the old version would throw your car off the racing line, and they don't do that anymore because they're just FIA standard plate curbs.
Next, we have a chopper view at the end of the bus stop, looking back towards the back straightaway.
The bus stop is one of the single most important corners around this entire place, and you'll notice right away the curbs there are extremely narrow, and they have not been this narrow since 2008. And actually the one that's on the bottom of the screen has, and you'll see in a moment when you switch over to the Google Earth image, it's been widened about 5 to 6 times, which hugely changes the line that you take through these corners, because obviously the bus stop in stock cars, you're hopping curbs as much as you possibly can. So when you have curbs that are this narrow, you can't utilize the track, you can't drive the track the same way. So when people tell me, oh, it's just the curbs, they got painted, no, they're totally different now, and there's a significant difference in how you attack these corners, which you'll see in a little bit with the comparison video.
Yeah, you can definitely see that. And obviously, as I think you may have already said it and I wasn't fully paying attention, all the runoff we still have, as we scroll back, we have all the sand, all the grass, and obviously per Watkins Glen, the pave. And then let's see, we skip next. I have another picture of the Armco.
Yep, so this is another good example, not only of the 2D texturing method, but also just look at the color grading between the iRacing screenshot and the real picture. The color difference is huge, and it's honestly at this point, even just changing the color of the Armco would be a big change.
Back in and I think Spa was the first track at Spa. There's a couple things there I wanted to grab, but I didn't. Spa came out 2010, and that was the first track they used some kind of light calibration method, and that helps preserve the colors in more detail, true to what they should be. And iRacing at the time, obviously that wasn't a thing at Watkins Glen, but one thing I want to point out is just look how, and I'll use the word pathetic, look at the grass on the iRacing version. It is just literally, it looks like generic AstroTurf.
Yeah.
And then you just have the wall with you could see the weeds just kind of baked into the image. And again, are you going to notice that driving? Of course not. But all it takes is a scenic shot during a broadcast. You see that 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 different examples of this stuff. And you're like, wow, that looks pathetic.
Yeah, and you can just kind of scroll through these next couple at a reasonably slow pace. But one of the things is, the reason why I bring up Watkins Glen, I am biased, obviously, but there is some facts to back me up as to why this is in one of the greatest priorities that needs to happen soon, because Watkins Glen is factually, there's data to support this, the most purchased road track in iRacing. It's the most used purchased track in iRacing. It's not Spa, it's not Le Mans, it's not the Nürburgring, it's not Imola, it's not Monza, it's Watkins
Glen. And that is to road, or is that an overall statement?
That's to road. But it's also crosses over to the oval side of things because all the stock car schedules use it, and it's on the peak broadcast every other year, and it's really, really, really showing its age now. And
this image, I know you said scroll through it, but this is of turn 10. Well, people name corners at Watkins Glen so differently. It's the second to last left-hander, the second to last corner on this cup configuration. Well, just overall actually. And you can see, just look at how low res everything looks like. Some of the stuff in the background is actually reminiscent of Nintendo 64. And I'm not even exaggerating that, in all honesty. We have the gravel traps, the trees.
Yeah.
And then go to the new version. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah. I was going to say the grandstands. I mean, those grandstands have been there since about 2013. So they took a little more, that's a little bit more forgivable than the rest of the track state. But actually, is that even right? Yeah, I think that's might have been a year or two earlier than that. But the grandstands are such a huge visual factor that fill your vision. They're enormous when you go to the racetrack, and they're just completely
They're at least
absent.
2012, come to think, because I remember watching one of those. I think it was the Kyle Busch
Marcus
battle.
Ambrose.
Oh, the Kyle Busch battle where there was all the oil on the track.
Yeah,
at the
2012.
end. And, I'm pretty sure I saw them there in the background. And then this is, I think this is one of the last ones. This is of the back straightaway. And you can just see, again, the difference. And look at just the background scenery of off track. It's just so low res compared to everything else. And then this, Kyle, I'm going to leave this one up for a little bit. And this is the last one in this set. You went in and took a kind of a shadowed image and all the major changes that are different compared to what we have now.
Yeah, so this is a perfect example of when people, I've brought this racetrack up on the forum so many times, and everyone always tells me that it hasn't really changed. They just repaved the place. And I went back and painstakingly this afternoon, went back and highlighted all the major changes. This is not to just the objects. This is to the surface of the racetrack. All the blue that you see are all massive visual indicators in the grandstands. The dark blue is all the new grandstands. So that is, they're ones that fill your vision when you climb up the S's. There's one at the top of the hill there. That's there in iRacing, but about a quarter of the size that it is now. Heading down turn 1, there's the one that's right off the runoff area there. That's an enormous grandstand. It's like 70, 80 feet tall. That is just completely absent from iRacing's version. So ignoring the grandstands, let's move to the curbing. When they did the repave in 2016, they ripped up all the curbing in the S's, redid all of that. They extended the curb in turn 1. All the curbs in the bus stop got completely ripped out and replaced with much taller, much more aggressive curbing. The exit of the carousel got paved with a bunch of runoff. They added a really long curb there as well. You see that, that's stereotypical NASCAR running super, super wide out of there. The boot version got some attention as well. All the black and white tall curbs that used to exist down in the boot have all been replaced with FIA standard curbs. And so that's, that changes how you race the track, because now you can actually use those curbs. You don't just bounce off of them. Turn 8 in the boot, the heel, as they would call it, got a big runoff change as well as some new curbing. Rejoining the NASCAR circuit also got new curbing. Turns 10 or 6 or whatever you want to call it, as you mentioned, also new runoff area. As well as turn 11 or turn 7, however you want to call it, new curbing there as well. The other thing, the walls. The green is highlighted. That is where walls were added or changed. We'll start over in turn 1 at the far left of your screen. When they repaved the track after 2011, after Rudimann's crash there, that was so violent, they moved the wall back about 10 feet and paved all the grass that was next to it. So that opens up that whole area and kind of reduces the funnel effect that you get. We'll go around all the way to the carousel now. And that wall got moved after the 2009 crash with Sam Hornish Jr., Jeff Gordon, and Casey Kane. That was just a safety feature. They moved that wall there as well. And now that the runoff area is there, it's not, it's kind of become a safety issue again lately. But again, all that runoff is used by NASCAR. Move over to the final corner, the bottom of your screen. There's a safer barrier there now. Yep. That's tire barrier. That tire barrier has not existed since 2010. So it's been quite some time since that, that has been in place. So this is probably the perfect racetrack to show you. Again, this is the most popular paid road track in iRacing. It has had so many updates that, and honestly, we've gotten a lot of rescans for a lot less. Michigan and Pocono, for example. that basically got a surface change and some walls moved around.
Yeah.
This is twice as extensive.
And going to just the point of getting the laser scan accuracy, a driving tool, well, a tool for, you know, drivers. I know a lot of the younger drivers these days, which I mean, most everyone is young. Oh, I'm going to boot up iRacing to help me go out to the Glen. And a lot of these landmarks, that's what they talk about. Well, hey, this is right here. It tells me where to brake. When you have, like you said, these major grandstands, all these signs down, whether a grandstand has been erected or taken down, that changes your reference points. And obviously curbs, if you're taking all this extra curb, you come off the carousel, you're taking all that extra room. You can't do that. That invalidates iRacing as the ultimate training tool. And I know Chevy, and I know all the manufacturers, the team, they have their own proprietary software for simulators, and they can use that, and it'll be better for iRacing, and that loses that whole advertising campaign, along with maybe them even using Assetto Corsa Project Cars.
Yeah. Well, actually, Parker Kligerman was down at Watkins Glen in August. He ran, I don't know if it was the Cup race or the Xfinity race down there, but he tweeted that he was using iRacing to practice for that weekend, and I was cringing because I know that he knows.
You know, he has to say that because he probably has a deal with them.
Well, it's not even that. It's just I'm sure he knows how old the scan is.
Were you around, Kyle, when a couple of years ago Tony Stewart had some special event at Pocono?
I think so.
Yeah, there was a special event. Tony Stewart was in it. It was Cup Cars at Pocono. This is before the repave, so we were on the old one, and it was right before the real Pocono race. And someone asked, "Oh, Tony, does this teach you blah blah blah?" And I think I don't remember exactly what he said, but he pretty much said it as nicely as he could. Well, I mean, it's a different version. I mean, it's still Pocono, but it's not going to really help me that much. Because, well, again, these repaves are big. So the last kind of bit of content I have on Watkins Glen, Kyle, you actually put this on SimTV's page. This is a side-by-side, and it'll be quiet for... Is there audio behind it?
There is. You don't have... It's not that important. You can mute it if you want.
Oh, well, in that case, then I'll mute it. But it is a side-by-side lap. I can't quite tell what car you're in. I think it's some kind of GT3 car.
Yeah, so I chose I was trying to find cars that were relatively similar between the Sims, and I don't have a lot of content for Assetto Corsa. So for iRacing, it's the Ferrari 488 GT3, and for Assetto Corsa, it's the 458 GT2. So that's as close as I can do.
Turn one now, and you can see the grandstands on both sides. Absent on iRacing, huge orange curbs. The runoff, it's kind of accurate, but iRacing ends a lot earlier. We're heading up the S's. iRacing's on the old concrete patch that went in there back in the late 90s. The S's, to be honest, it doesn't look that bad.
Not too bad. And that's a perfect example of why I think a lot of people, from the driver's perspective, it doesn't look that bad. But you get down to the bus stop, and it changes.
Look at how much curb you can take, especially on the exit. All that curb you can take. It's a lot smoother, obviously. And again, you put this right in the video, Kyle. We can put the carousel right here. Look at all the runoff here. You can see there's no barrier except the actual barrier there.
Right, but, in the iRacing version, you have to constrain yourself from unwinding the wheel because of the grass on exit.
And then here we come, grandstand in turn, whatever it is, the left-hander, grandstand here, all the runoff on the left, and there's the safer barrier, which takes away some room on exit, and that is a lap.
Yeah, so, and again, from the driver's perspective, it's not quite as bad. But you can see very quickly there are different lines that I took, especially through the bus stop and through turn. I'm going to call it turn 6 because that's how most of the TV announcers call it now. The penultimate corner, the lines change there because you don't have to unwind as late. You can unwind earlier. You can track out wide on corner exit, and it changes how you drive the racetrack. And honestly, if I wasn't in a car that was, I actually don't know in terms of the speed, the relative speed between the GT3 and GT2, which one was supposed to be faster. But in identical cars, the new track is significantly faster, not just because of the stickier pavement, but because you can use so much more of the racetrack. And
the one thing, and what we're going to start wrapping this up here, you said, you wrote specifically in the video, that was not a laser scanned version of Assetto Corsa.
And that was actually a little bit wrong. It is scanned, but it's a LiDAR scan, so it's not super accurate.
Yeah, it's more of a, is it a kind of a riding scanner, if you will, a driving scanner? I know that is a thing on some.
It's more for elevation than it is for the individual bumps and grooves. So yeah, it's not the most accurate. And that's my point isn't to make, say Assetto Corsa's version is far superior or Assetto Corsa is a better sim. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just trying to show people the differences between a track that is up to date and one that is very, very far out of date.
And kind of to spin this around and kind of be our last discussion point of the night, and if anybody in chat has a specific question you want our opinion on, let us know now. And this is not going to change. This is just kind of a driver to driver, broadcaster to broadcaster thing. Is the laser scan everything that it's made out to be? Is it as important as it may have been 10 years ago when iRacing came out with it? And it wasn't a thing 10 years ago, and it was huge. Is it, now that we see what can be done on lower fidelity data, is it what it is touted to be? Is it as important as it may have come off to be?
Yes and no. It's a complicated answer there, because I think there's a lot of sims and games that are using laser scanning as the new standard. And the problem is that iRacing does not have the budgets to compete with Turn 10 Studios and all the other groups that do Project Cars and Assetto Corsa and all that stuff. They don't have the same budget, but the laser scanning is the standard for track creating in 2019. The problem becomes, if you're going to tout a laser scan, it needs to be, the reason for the laser scan is to be accurate. And if it's 15 years old, it's accurate to a 15-year-old version of the track, but it's not accurate to now. And that's a very clear issue, that if you're going to be if you're going to tout millimeter accuracy, or even 30 centimeter accuracy, it needs to be that. It needs to be at least somewhat close to the current version of the track. And I think that's where iRacing is going to lose out. It's because they have such a smaller audience. They don't have the ability to go out and redo tracks every 5 years. And again, their track list is 5 times what Assetto Corsa comes with out of the box. But laser scanning is the base level. I think it's what people expect now. I think even Forza, Forza's version of Watkins Glen is laser scanned, and it's a newer scan than iRacing's is. So
I know Evan and I have a black PTR TV. We have Project Cars, and we do play it from time to time. And we went to Texas Motor Speedway, and there's no way it's laser scanned. That was literally the worst rendition of Texas ever. There was like an uphill in turn 1 or something like that. And it was literally goes from like 0 degrees of banking to 24, and there's no I don't know how that got out. But laser scanning is important, and as you said, to wrap this up, what we're saying, I think I speak on both of our behalf, we are both avid iRacers, both as drivers and both as iRacing ambassadors, myself being on the Esports Network. Drew, don't kill me if you see this. I love iRacing, but this is not something that, and I said in my post earlier, this is not something that is just we need more content, we need this, we need that, so whatever, we have it, it's fine, it's good enough. No one notices this. This is a fundamental flaw in how they have run this business, and it is becoming far and far more noticed overall by not even just racers, not even fans. It's becoming known by the actual sanctions and the facilities themselves.
Yeah.
And iRacing does not have, as you said, the means to go out and start from scratch. iRacing can't come out with an iRacing 2. It'll literally take till 2037. iRacing can't do that. They are in a box. We have all of this content over the past 13, 14 years, even before we launched. Some of it's really good. Everything I'd say past 2013, perfectly fine. Everything before 2011 to 2013,
not so fine.
No, 2011 to 2013 stuff is passable. That's where a lot of the shorter tracks were, like Southern National, stuff like that, Lucas Oil. But everything 2010 earlier, whether it looks decent or not, what do you do with it? And we don't have the answers. We have some answers, but that also goes against fundamental kind of marketing terms iRacing has gone with. If you're updating Daytona bits and pieces, you've lost some of your validity, your accuracy, but it also makes the track look better in the end. So what are you going for? We don't have the answers. We have the thoughts. This is a fundamental problem. It needs fundamental attention. It needs to come to light. iRacing needs to come out and make a statement saying, we get it. We can't do this. This is what we're going to do. And they need to go and actually go, in my opinion, go out there to the masses and say, this is what we're going to do about this problem. We're not going to go out and say that our tracks are 100% laser scanned, because obviously we have to fudge some stuff. We have laser scanned surfaces of the era. Everything else is going to be based on art. Go set a tone and go out there and achieve it, because right now we don't have an answer. We don't have a solid concrete path of what they want to do with this. We know they want to update it. We know they want to rescan it, but then we see what they're doing with Daytona, where they're doing bits and pieces, and it convolutes that. They need to come out there and just make a statement. We know this is what we're going to do about it.
I agree. I think that sums it up pretty nicely there.
So, I want to thank chat was pretty much broadcasters, PSI TV, and Racers, no, RLBN. I know both of you by name, but I'm going to leave you guys with your privacy. But hi to both of you. Thanks for being in this. Hopefully this gets out to the right people. Might get out to the wrong people. Just share, like, subscribe. We love doing these. I've had a lot of different guests in the past on these. Kyle's, this is the second one he's been on. So we love doing these. Love topics for the future. Let me know. Corey at primetimeraCing.tv, primetimeraCing.tv. We just redid the website. We're looking for more broadcasts, so again, please send them our way. So Kyle, SimTV, you guys doing phenomenal over there. You beat us in broadcasting subs because you guys have been putting out a lot more content because we had to shut down a little bit. You guys are kicking ass. Keep it up. I would, like I said, I would give you my spot on the esports network, but I know you don't want it. That's a topic for a different day.
Yeah, yes it is.
Andrew! He just said say my name, so. So, any final thoughts regarding absolutely anything, Kyle, topic or not?
Well, I do know that there are some... David Tucker is in the works doing some camera adjustments in terms of camera tools that I bet you're not quite aware of yet.
Nope.
So he's working... This is from Drew Adamson last night.
Are you allowed to say this in the public?
Yeah, I mean, if he told it to me, it's fine. It's really not that big of a deal. Basically, I think he said that David's working on a tool, like a point-to-point camera, so you can basically track subjects along a curve. So that's
a
no
drone
timeline.
Cam, a rail cam, something like that. Yeah.
No timeline, but that's something fun. So they are doing some things that we are requesting, which is very cool.
Yeah. So that, and listening to the fans, listening to especially the broadcasters, which are out there and being ambassadors for the product, whether directly or indirectly. So that is episode 9. Of course, we ran long, but this is a topic we really wanted to get out there. So hope who viewed it did enjoy it. Have a great night, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.